Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming to this lecture. And thank you, Réseau Art Nouveau Network, for giving me this opportunity. My name is Peder Alme, and I'm a restorer at Ornamentfabrikken. And I will be talking about the ornaments on the building Øwregata 13, Latinskolen, in Ålesund, Norway. So my lecture will be a description of the objects and their history and materials, and my method of restoring the ornaments during the summer 2023. And also my presentation is made for PC and Mac, so I don't know, but possibly the text might be a bit small for some tablets. If so, feel free to request the PDF from me after this lecture. Okay, so first a little about Ornamentfabrikken. Ornamentfabrikken is a sole proprietorship by me, Peder Alme. I am a trained sculptor and stucco plaster work specialist. I do mold making and casting. I produce new design and I do restoration. And in that sense, of course, the old Art Nouveau and Jugendstil town of Ålesund in Norway is an important backdrop to my services. And this year I have been involved in the project with restoring the ornaments at Latinskolen in Ålesund. So this is the building in question. This is me on the scaffold. Sorry, I'm going to use my, do you guys see my laser pointer?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the building in question. This is me on the scaffold. The old town of Ålesund. Some of my traditional stucco plasterwork tools, spatulas, and also my insignia for my company Ornamentfabrikken. And I also have, of course, a homepage, and I'm also active and present on social media. So, first, starting with the building, Latinskolen, meaning the Latin school in Norwegian, is a school building built in 1907. It was rebuilt after the older Ålesund Gymnasium from 1864 was lost in the Great Town Fire of Ålesund in 1904. So the town burnt in 1904 and the fire was total. So most of Ålesund center was rebuilt according to the dominant architectural ideals in the early 1900s. The building is situated in the town center and was drawn by the architect brothers Christian and Hans Bakker Fürst, who also did many other buildings in Ålesund during the rebuilding of the town. And also the building still houses a school today. So it has been a school since its construction in the early 1900s. There is also a secondary building built to the south in the early 20s. I think it was built or finished in 1923, which makes it one of the biggest building complex in the city center of Ålesund. It's approximately 6,000 square meters. And it is the oldest parts from 1907 that are highly decorated with ornaments and various run moldings. And what is special is that all the ornaments are hand modeled in situ on the facade, which means that the artisans, when the building was constructed, has shaped the individual ornaments directly onto the wall using fresh mortar instead of prefabricating and mounting the pieces. So in that sense, they show a great example of the art of hand modeling, the art of the, in Italian, I think it's called stuccatori, or in Norwegian, a stuccateur. So this is the south facade and parts of the western facade. And we can slightly see the ornaments beneath the windows and also around a clock here. And also these ornamentations relate to how the Art Nouveau movement was part in building a national identity in Norway in the early 1900s. So here we see a small collection of some of the in all 60 various ornaments from the south and the west facade. So these are the ones that are positioned beneath the windows. So we see ornaments depicting acanthus leaves, such as this one, traditional acanthus leaves. We have green man masks, which is the theme of a sort of troll or gargoyle or grotesque that is also a sort of plant. So the mask in combination with acanthus leaves coming out of the mouths and etc. And we also have animals. There is a bear and a goat and several human figures. The figures are, and also the animals, are characters associated with Norwegian folklore. At least this character has been interpreted as the Askeladden, which is often the main protagonist in Norwegian folktales. And we of course have the princess, and also a sort of, I don't know the English word. In Norwegian we would say nisse, a leprechaun or something. And also the acanthus motif relate to the acanthus in traditional wood carvings. So that's also a link to the Norwegian ideals. And of course the hand modeling in situ also relates to the ideals in the arts and craft movement, and I guess also the Art Nouveau movement, being specific artworks produced in the very process of constructing the building itself. Most ornaments in Ålesund are hand modeled, and in that sense the ornaments on Latinskolen are amongst the most expressive and artistically advanced ornaments in town. Moving on. So the previous slide was from the mostly the south facade and also parts of the western facade. That is the most decorated parts of the building, but we also have two big ornaments on the north facade, shown on this drawing, and also one on the west facade. On the west facade there is a big acanthus pattern and a circular run profile or molding surrounding this clock, This is the biggest ornament on the building. It measures almost 4 meters in length and more than 1.5 meters in height. And there is also this owl and acanthus ornament that is modeled in a niche or a portal with an overhang on the north face of the building, north facade. The depth of the overhang is about 60 centimeters. So it's not upside down per se, but it's sort of like in the ceiling above the entrance. And also the owl is a recurring theme on the building and in the ornamentations, symbolizing knowledge and learning, referring to the institution of being a school. So, who made them? The artists. The ornaments are sculpted by the stucco artist Mons Hartvedt, together with the sculptor J.O. Johnsen. According to my sources, it was Mons that sculpted or modeled, and Johnsen planned the decorations. Johnsen and Mons, they had a stucco service or company in Oslo or in Christiania, which was the name of the capital in the early 1900s. And they traveled to Ålesund after the town fire for work. And at least Mons Hartvedt worked in Ålesund for about 3 to 4 years. This picture is from 1910, I think. So Mons was quite young when he was in Ålesund. I think he was around 20 years old. Mons was also a trained woodcarver. He was trained under the renowned Norwegian woodcarver Lars Kinsarvik, and he carved together with Lars Kinsarvik, amongst others, in the rebuilding of the Borgund Church in Ålesund, which was also a project by the architects Christian and Hans Bakker Fürst. One story has it that Mons Hartvedt's wood carving tools got stolen, which might have forced him to focus on his practice as a stucco and plaster worker. And qualities in stucco work, similar to Hartvedt's work on Latinskolen, can be associated with other buildings in Ålesund, drawn by the Fürst architects. This bottom picture is a selection of Mons Hartvedt's tools that has been donated to Jugendstilcenteret, the Art Nouveau Center in Ålesund. They were donated by Trygve Hartvedt, which was Mons Hartvedt's son, and also himself also a stucco specialist. So the tools are a classical plaster or stucco spatula. We have small trowels, loop tools, brushes, a mallet, and different modeling tools and a caliper. So these are tools that Mons would have maybe used when modeling the ornaments on Latinskolen. So closing in on the ornaments, we are still on the south facade of the building, and we can pick a example of the ornaments up here, for instance, and we can follow it to its position in a rectangular niche on the facade. So this is also one of the green man masks, a
Tá, ok. Pronto, tá, tchau.
humanoid figure with acanthus leaves. So they are positioned in these rectangular niches beneath the windows. The niches measure approximately 60 by 110 centimeters and 60 by 120 centimeters. They vary. So some windows and niches are bigger than the others, but they also vary slightly themselves, sort of. So some are perhaps 62 by 112 and some are 63 by 109. So the niches vary slightly, which makes it quite practical to be hand sculpting directly into the niches, because then nothing needs to be precise. There is a freedom to the technique of hand modeling in situ. The niches are surrounded by horizontal and vertical run moldings, and also these slate slabs above and beneath the ornaments. The ornaments also protrude their niches slightly, some of them, as some ornaments may be as deep as 17 centimeters. So they are quite exposed, of course, from drippings from above, from the wall of the building itself, but of course also from the weather, since the ornaments are protruding the facade to a big extent. Still closing in, this is the same green man mask ornament from before, from the previous slide, and a drawing that shows a cross-section of the ornament, its construction and its relation to the overall building or the wall. So we have the clay brick. The clay, it's a brick wall, brick construction, of course. And we have a plaster base, a smooth traveled plaster base applied to the clay brick. And onto the smooth traveled plaster base, which can be seen amongst the outer contours of the ornament here, onto the plaster base is the modeling of the ornament itself. This particular ornament has a depth of 14 centimeters, with the nose tip being the deepest point, and it measures 62 centimeters high. And above we have the run profile. This is the cross-section of the horizontal profile, and we have some shading showing the vertical profile, and we have the slate slabs. So the ornaments are modeled in several layers onto this plaster base. And on this particular breaking or cross-section of an ornament, we can distinguish 3 different layers. This is the first layer, this is the second layer, and this is the third and outer layer with the details. But all the layers, of course, or obviously relate to the outer contours of the ornament. in the examples of the ornaments coming off the plaster base, the laminating, which I will be talking more about, where the ornaments come off, we can find traces of a charcoal drawing onto the plaster base, which is a drawing drawn by the artist, and that he has and a drawing that he has been modeling according to. So first the smooth troweled plaster base has been produced, and then there has been produced a drawing onto the wall, and the fresh mortar has been applied over the drawing, and then modeling the details on top. There is no color or paint to the ornaments. However, the ornaments may have been painted with a white, possibly lime-based paint in an original color scheme with gray walls and white ornaments. This is a speculation based on visual clues and fragments from the ornaments themselves, and also old photos, because all the ornaments have these white remnants on them, but it's not sure by far. It's just my my speculations. But today they are perceived as unpainted and gray. Okay, so I'm soon moving on to the repairs, but before the any repairs were done this summer, there was a material analysis performed by SERIE materialanalyse in Helsingør in Denmark, which is a laboratory specializing in analyzing historic mortars. And the analysis was based on a small fragment from a highly damaged acanthus ornament. So this is the place where the test sample was taken from. And the sample also included fragments of the ornament itself, of course, but also traces of the plaster base mortar material on the back. So the analysis gave the opportunity to identify ingredients in both the original ornament mortar and also the plaster base. So this is a still from the report, and the analysis shows a Portland cement and a air lime binder as the primary binders, or the binders in the mortars, calc being the lime. This is the ornament mortar, and we have the mortar for the plaster base, which has the same binders, Portland cement and lime, air lime. The Portland cement is of a coarsely grinded quality, typical of the early 20th century. And there is much more binder, both cement and lime, in the ornaments than in the plaster base. The ornaments are basically, it is mostly cement binder with some lime and some sand. The material for the plaster base is of a more classic mix ratio to that we would have been recognizable in other plasters. The analysis also identified traces of a transparent plastic-based surface treatment, a translucent and almost invisible treatment. And this was recognized by the manager of the building as an impregnation treatment done in the 1990s. And we also have, so this picture, it's mostly for the visual aspect of the slide, but this is a microscopic image of the mortars where they can isolate and see the specific grains of Portland cement, sand, air pockets, etc. So it's a very useful tool to be able to get a material analysis like this. It makes the rest of the process much more easy and much more, it's a good basis for knowledge about the original materials. So the condition of the in all 60 ornaments on the facade, all the ornaments suffer from one or a combination of the following factors. We have the process of delamination and loosening from the substrate. So these three pictures in the center show how pieces of the ornaments are loose and can easily be detached or picked off the facade. Not everywhere and not always, but some places they come off like this. So this is the fragment, and here we can also see traces of the charcoal drawing. So this, of course, needs to be attended, the lamination and loosening. They also suffer from a black mineral crust seen on this green man mask, which gives the ornaments a distinct visual character. The mineral crust is a sort of, at least to my knowledge, a sort of gypsum mineral with calcium leaking from the lime mortar and reacting with pollutants and sulfur in the air. And we have surface erosion of the mortar and cracking. This is a good but severe example of the matrix itself cracking. The cracks might be associated with, in fact, drying shrinkage, so they can even be from the point of application of the fresh mortar when the ornaments were modeled and the given drying conditions at the time. We have remnants of plant material, twigs and moss and lichen from earlier and current plant growth. Some places on the facade there has been hedges and plants growing onto the wall, and remnants of those might be present in the ornaments. And we have the former treatment with the plastic-based impregnation in the 1990s, as we saw in the material analysis. We have former repairs that distort and compromise the visual aspects of the ornaments. And we have the issue with the different strengths to the ornaments and the plaster base. As we saw in the mortar analysis, the ornaments are stronger than the plaster base, which in some cases is resulting the plaster base to be eroding away, while leaving the ornament sort of like hanging outside of the missing base layer. So many ornaments are in splendid condition, and all only have a few cracks and this black mineral crust. And some ornaments might have severe effects done by all of these factors. So the variation is high, and every ornament needs to be treated in an individual manner. So then we have the repairs to handle the factors just described. The repairs are performed with one or a combination of the following methods, which will be presented in the following slides. The methods are preparing restoration mortars, cleaning the ornaments, securing loose parts. As we saw on the previous slides, pieces are coming off and they need to be secured. Of course, also to make sure that the building is safe to be moving about. So securing loose parts, filling cracks, remodeling details, remounting loose parts. There is some mold making and casting, and there is one example of complete reconstruction. And we have the important part of the project of reports and documentation. So, beginning with the restoration mortars. The restoration mortars have been developed on basis of the results from the material analysis. And I have chosen a natural cement as the primary binder, a natural cement from the French producer of Vichat. I'm not sure of the pronunciation, but I think it's Vichat. So the cement is called prompt natural cement. I'm hoping for maybe some information or discussion or questions later on, but of course, when working with cement-based historic materials, there is always the issue of what type of cement to be using, because of course the types of Portland cements that were used in the early 1900s aren't being produced anymore. So what to use then? So that's a big discussion. I'm not going to open up for it now, but so in this project I have chosen this natural cement, which can be said to resemble some aspects of a historic Portland cement more than a modern Portland cement today. So the cement is the primary binder, and we also have the wet slaked air lime, a lime putty, and different graded sands for mortars, for the ornaments, and for the plaster base. The sands for the ornaments is much more finely graded than the sands for the plaster base. And also the restoration mortars are mixed according to the ratios proposed by the material analysis. This picture shows mixing and preparing a restoration mortar on the scaffold using a small silicon bowl, mixing bowl, and my traditional plaster spatulas, as we saw in the donation with Mons Hartvedt's tools. So before applying any mortars or anything else, the ornaments have been cleaned, and the cleaning involves then scraping and cleaning the ornaments using different tools such as spatulas and soft brushes. And I have been using cold and hot water in the form of steam, and also pressurized air. So this is for removing unsightly fragments of former surface treatments, removing plant debris, and removing dirt and filth. So in this picture is the example of a wolf's head, and it has this fragment of a pale gray plastic looking like surface treatment, or at least some debris of something, in the form of, it looks almost like a brush stroke. So in the case of being on the very head of this wolf figure, it needs to be removed because it distorts the visual qualities of the ornament. So things like these were scraped off. This is after the cleaning. Some ornaments only had the treatment of being flushed with water and steamed, and some again have the discussed plant growth that is being picked out using typical tools like this small metal spatula. Yeah, so that was the cleaning. All ornaments are being cleaned at least with water and steam, and mostly they also need some scraping and removing different debris of surface treatments, etc. And then we have the what I have called the securing. So the securing involves using these mechanical fixings. They are acid-proof spiral anchors, and I have used them. If we look at this ornament, which is one of my favorites, a type of green man mask, only it's a sort of line figure. This whole area in the lower part to the right had severe delamination. It was coming off, and not only the ornaments but also the plaster base was coming off the clay construction underneath. So the whole volume has been secured using these spiral anchors, and they are inserted by drilling a thin, small pilot hole, and then these spiral anchors are hammered in using an SDS hammer drill, and they are then wedged in place. And I have also inserted them in different angles, sort of like to cramp the whole section to the underlying construction, wedging it in place. And here we see the small pilot holes with the metal fixing positioned in it. So after the hammering, it is positioned in a recess underneath the surface. So this is a quick and quite time-efficient method when successful, leaving just this tiny hole for refilling and retouching. So it doesn't distort, or it doesn't change or remove much of the original material. However, as my work has progressed, I have slightly replaced this method with other methods because of the high vibration to the ornaments, and also a few examples of the ornaments even cracking a bit when inserting the tools. So pros and cons, of course, to every method. But this specific method has, at least during the summer of now 2023, it has been slightly discontinued. Yeah. And then we have the process of filling cracks. So there are cracks forming on the ornaments, and the cracks draw moisture and keep moisture within the ornaments, which might result in more cracking when frost is working on the substrate, etc. And also the visual aspects of the cracks needs to be attended. So this is the example of a symmetrical acanthus ornament. And here we have zoomed in on the cracks forming in the center of the ornament. So on this picture, the cracks have been cut open using a Dremel tool or rotating mechanical discs, and they have been marked using yellow tape to control the process, so I don't miss any. And on this picture, the cracks have been refilled using the appropriate restoration mortar. And also here you can see some of the plaster base being repaired as well in the same way. So cutting them open, of course, cleaning the cracks afterwards for dust and debris and etc. And then pre-wetting the substrate and refilling with the restoration mortar. Being that the ornaments aren't painted, the restoration mortars are a little sensitive to color variations due to conditions such as the amount of water in the mix, the pre-wetting of the substrate, drying conditions, etc. So I have found that the best way of applying the mortar is to put it on in an excess and then scraping the repairs down to the correct levels. That was possibly a bit too technical for many to understand, but there are some issues on how I apply the mortars and how they develop in the stages of setting and developing the final tint or the colors. I also think this ornament is a good example to talk about. So this is of course, a symmetrical acanthus ornament, but in the center here, it's obvious that the symmetry is somewhat off, which is a nice detail and a nice characteristic of the ornaments being hand modeled. So variations are sort of everywhere within the immediate symmetry of the design. So that was the filling of the cracks. And we also have, which is more of the same in a way, the remodeling of details. So remodeling involves the use of these traditional stucco tools, steel spatulas, small trowels, and brushes, and the mixes of the restoration mortars, and basically remodeling lost details, such as this part of the green man mask mustache. So this is my remodeling, and this is the same ornament seen from a distance, and the small remodeling is visible there. And also with this, call it Askeladden figure, we have the woolen hat was missing the detail at the end, and also the tip of its nose was had been detached. So this picture shows my remodeling of the detail on the wooden hat and the nose tip. And also here we have the issue of applying fresh mortar to a set and stiff substrate and following the same flowy lines and trying to make it as free in the modeling as the original ornaments. It's not always easy, and also the if you overwork the mortar using different tools, the mortar tends to have a more whitish tint when it has set, due to the extraction of the lime binder, which is white, to the surface of the mortars. So there are some tricks in getting the right sculptural effects, but also the right tint to the mortar. And also here I have found that the best results are when putting the mortar in a surplus and then sort of scraping it down to the correct levels and the correct shape after it has set a little bit. So we have talked about the lamination and the loosening of the parts of the ornaments. I talked about the securing or the fixing with the mechanical spiral anchors, and that the method of inserting those have been slightly discontinued. During my work, I found that the more adequate way of treating the ornaments was to, in fact, not always, but more and more, take loose pieces off in their wholeness and preparing the underlying substrate, the plaster base, and then reassembling them using the same restoration mortar as the ornaments as a glue. And then I am also sure that the connections between the ornaments and the plaster base has been cleaned. So it gives a bit more control to the restoration. So when taking, so these are the pieces that belong to this ornament. Taking them off preparing the plaster base using a hatchet mostly to make mechanical keys, and then mixing restoration mortars and then gluing them back in place. And in this case also the combination of remodeling small lost pieces, and also this ray in the center of the acanthus ornament has also been more or less remodeled. And of course the cracks and small crevices, etc., has also been filled using restoration mortars. So of course, and again, there is always a combination of different treatments to the individual ornament. So that was the remounting, and we have reached the example of using the techniques of mold making and casting as a part of the restoration work. I used mold making and casting to document and to, in a way, save the run profile, the run molding on the bigger acanthus ornament around the clock to the west. The profile of the molding was in fairly good shape. So it's not for reconstructing the profile now per se, but it's for keeping the profile sort of like in as a documentation. So a thin silicon mold has been applied to the profile with a plaster case on top. The mold is being taken off. It's as you can see, it's just a narrow segment of the profile, and a plaster copy, plaster of Paris gypsum copy has been cast in my studio. It has been mounted to a board, and then I can cut a thin segment of the profile and then trace the exact profile onto a paper or whatever. So of course all the ornaments have been documented using photography and measurements and descriptions, but once again, in this particular instance where the run profile is such a dominant part of the ornament, it made sense to make a cast of the profile for documentation. Okay, moving on to one example, one ornament that is the subject for a complete reconstruction of the whole ornament. The ornament seen on this picture was badly damaged. It was completely falling apart, and it was right above the an entrance to the building, only high up, so falling pieces would have been a great hazard to the students at the school, so it had to come off. So it was dismantled last summer. This is the rectangular niche after the ornament has been taken off, and we can see the sort of like shadows of the ornament, but also the complete charcoal drawing was present underneath the ornament. The pieces were taken to my studio, my workshop, and pieced together. Some of the pieces, the most narrow or thin sections, got lost in the process. But before taking it off, of course, I had produced some good photographs and measurements of the ornament. So this is the ornament reassembled in my workshop. And on the basis of these pieces and the photographs, I have produced charcoal drawings on paper in the scale 1:1. So this drawing is a drawing of the ornament in the scale 1:1. So this is at least 60 centimeters by 110 centimeters. And then again, this drawing has been the basis for my trials in the studio to try to remodel a complete copy of the ornament. So this picture shows my remodeling. It's not finished, but I'm closing in on the surface details. The heavy contours are present, but the surface details are missing. And it has been modeled in a mock-up or a model of the rectangular niche present on the facade. So this the project on Latinskolen is still going, and this particular piece is awaiting completion from next summer 2024. It will, of course, be a challenge to reconstruct it, but also a great opportunity for me to study and learn more about the technique of hand modeling in situ and the art of the stuccatori or the stuccateur, the stucco artists. I am still practicing in my studio and hoping to be able to perform a remodeling of the this ornament onto the facade. And also it's really fascinating to be able to at least work with objects that illustrate, but also try to replicate the techniques of the art of hand modeling, which is, at least in Norway, is a more or less lost art in the plaster work trade. So this is something that at least I want to be able to develop further. Yeah. Okay, so I think this is all. This is not my last slide, but the last slide having information about the work I have been doing on Latinskolen. So this slide is about reports and documentation. Reports and documentation is, of course, an important part of the project. So I have produced reports and documentation of the ornaments before the restoration started, where I documented the ornaments condition and proposing methods for repair. So this is a picture from the first report, where I had taken put the ornaments in a system of different grades of conditions, and then proposing an overall method for repair. And also, when I started doing the repairs to the ornaments, I have produced documentation for each ornament and the specific treatments to each object. So this is a still from one of those reports. So in this example, we have the yellow frame showing some remodeling of details. These crosses, I think, are mechanical fixings, and arrows showing refilling of cracks, etc. So this is sort of like the visual for those types of reports. And this picture is just from my notes made on the scaffold. So I have these photos or maps almost of each ornament, taking notes on what sort of procedures have been performed on the ornaments. And a final report will, of course, summarize the whole restoration project when finished. And of course, the reports are based on also photography and measurements of the ornaments as a part of preserving information about them. So this is in fact my last slide. Before I open up to any questions, I would like to make my final inquiry and my invitation to, if you have, if any of you in the audience have information relating to today's subject that you think that I could have been interested in, please feel free to contact me on ornamentfabrikken@gmail.com. So this could be about other projects with the works on facade ornamentations made using the technique of in situ modeling, and also to what materials are best suited for restoring mortars associated to Art Nouveau architecture. Yeah. And also, if you have questions that you want me to answer or anything, please feel free to contact me. And also, finally, feel free to comment on my lecture or ask questions here now. So, thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you.
I guess that was it.
Yes, thank you, Peter. It was really interesting. Today you have made accessible a very specific topic for all of us. So it was really interesting. There is any question for Peter? Otherwise, I have a couple.
Peter, it's
Yes, please.
Hi, I have
hello, Vlad.
Long time. Peter, this figures ornaments, it was original painted or it was original not painted?
So I mentioned only the material analysis. I was hoping for some results on the original surface treatments. However, I was maybe a bit sloppy when I sent the sample, so the sample didn't have any original surface treatments present. However, when I inspect the ornaments, they all have some remnants or traces of a white surface, of a white substance on the surface. So, and it's quite soft, and it's obviously some sort of mineral material. When I scrape it with my tools, it's quite soft. So that's the basis for my speculations that they might have been painted white. And also, if I can just go back to the old photos of the building. So on this photo, one can assume that the wall has been unpainted, seeing the what's it called in English? The traces of the applying of the mortar. So my speculation is that the building has been gray, unpainted, and possibly then the ornaments being in a white color, which would have produced a quite different expression than the facade today. Did it answer your question, Vlad?
Yes, my friend.
But as I said, it's only my speculation. There hasn't been any material analysis of the substance. But it's quite sure that the facade has been, the walls, the plaster on the walls has been unpainted, that the building has been gray.
Because Peter, if I notice, facade is like rough. It's like making like shlama. I don't know how it's called in English. So if I believe on this first photo which you show, it's look like very rough elevation of a building. So I believe maybe whole facade it's supposed to be like not painted. Like, you know, I have one building in Oslo, near Polish ambassador in Alexander Ålesund, and it was also completely not painted.
Yep.
And accurate with same shlama which you, this quadrat which you mentioned right now, accurate with this this human face with acanthus leaves, and it was completely not painted, and this have very special effect, like you know, rough, not completed, like very interesting effect.
It's a bit raw.
Raw.
Yeah. In Ålesund, this is a big topic, and it has been a big topic for years. To what extent the original Art Nouveau architecture was left unpainted or not. So many have, to me, it's obvious that when you see old photographs of buildings from Ålesund, they are gray. But of course, today they have been painted, and they have been painted since at least the Second World War. So, but originally, going back to the also this picture shows it's in black and white, of course, but it's mostly these lines on the plaster on the walls that are the traces of the scaffold. People putting plaster on in segments down the scaffold. So this is typical of old photos of buildings from Ålesund, which makes me speculate that the buildings have been gray, unpainted. So again, talking about the ornaments, if they have been white or not, is just a speculation. But I think it's a nice thought experiment to visualize the gray building with completely white ornaments, which would have been a quite different expression than today. So that was actually my point, but once again, it's only my speculations.
Thank you, Peter. It's fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other question?
Erica, hi.
Yes, hi,
Just-
Peter, please.
Hi, I'm just going to really follow on from that question. I mean, given Ålesund's location and the weather, I'm assuming that most of the buildings in the town, from what I remember, as you said, are very decorative and overpainted. One assumes that they have to be painted on a fairly regular basis to keep them looking reasonable. So if the decision is taken not to paint, then you are potentially saving yourself money every few years, having to keep the building looking nice. So that was one question, and the other one was, it seems to me that the carving on this particular building is much deeper and recessed more than a lot of the other decoration, the other stucco on the other buildings in the town. Do we know why that approach was taken? Because one of your first slides, you mentioned how deep the carving was into the building. Whereas if I remember from my time in Ålesund, a lot of the buildings have got carving that sit proud of the facade. I just wondered why they took that decision to recess the carving into the facade.
Why they are positioned in these niches
rather than sitting in front.
I don't know. It's a good question. It's a nice observation of some details. And as you say, most ornaments in Ålesund are standing proud right onto the plaster. What is quite funny with these ornaments is that the fact that they are situated in these rectangular niches makes them prevent them from falling out. So they are since they are so stiff, the mortar is so stiff, so they are sort of almost wedged in place. They can be coming off, delaminating, but they still hang through the effect of wedging. But of course, I'm sure that wasn't the reason why they were positioned in these niches in the first place. I guess my answer would be that it's primarily a visual demand, but one again could speculate that as you mentioned, the sheer depth of the ornaments makes them more vulnerable to gravity, to coming down, sort of. But I don't have any good answers other than those types of reflections. But as I mentioned, it's they are more expressive than most of the ornaments in Ålesund. So I'm sure the artists had great fun when doing those. But yeah, I don't have any specific answers other than the reflections. There is a neighboring building which is also the architect's fish. And it has the exact same acanthus and green man masks, only in different designs, of course. But they are much more shallow. So perhaps it's also because of the sheer size of the building, because it's quite big. So perhaps they needed the depth of the relief for producing the wanted effect visually. Yeah. And you also asked about the painting of the town. As I say, it's a big subject in Ålesund. If you ask me, I'm one of those who would want to start to remove paint. And Norway is also a crazy country when it comes to painting our houses. We paint all the time, and we paint too much. And of course, now the issues with paintings or paint is starting to come in the when talking about microplastics, etc. So pollutions from the paint industry. So I'm one of those who would want to start removing paint, and also as a part of the health of the masonry, of course. So yeah, but it's a big issue. It has been for many years in Ålesund, and I guess also because some arguments say that it was an aesthetic principle to have the gray buildings. It was sort of like near the materials. It was raw. It was natural in a way. So one could also argument that the grayness is a aesthetic element in the architecture, which is something to consider, of course, when it comes to preserving the Art Nouveau town of Ålesund.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Any other question? I wonder why you said before that a few buildings in Ålesund present this stucco decoration, and the question is why? I mean, because there was the School of Art, it was a technique that was quite widespread, or there is any other reason concern really the conception also of the architecture in Ålesund at the beginning of 20th century, because I suppose that, I don't know, it's not, my mind is not the best material for a city that it's just nearby the sea, and that it's quite exposed to the wind. Then, for example, there is the same in Italy, in Genova. I mean, it's a city that is just in front of the sea, but the stucco, it's quite it's really used because it's a part, it's part of really a conception of architecture at the 17th century. So I'm wondering why in Ålesund.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch the question. Why they used stucco?
Why the stucco? Yes, because I don't know, in the local School of Arts, it was a technique that was quite widespread. Why stucco and not another material, for example, for that kind of ornaments?
But the material is quite durable. So these ornaments are quite durable.
Mm-hmm.
It's not plaster, it's not gypsum.
Okay.
As I guess in Italy and further south in Europe, they could have possibly used gypsum mortars.
Mm-hmm.
However, of course, the Portland cement mortars are, of course, associated to more modern architecture. But that being said, the mortars on Latinskolen and also the mortars used in Ålesund is mostly cement mortars and lime cement mortars, and they are also often really strong, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Since, as you say, it's the climate is quite rough with a lot of rainfall and frost cycles, and of course the salt from the sea. But the material itself is quite durable in our climate. So I don't know if I guess the perhaps the use of gypsum mortars would have prevailed a bit longer in Europe, since they have the traditions of using those. But in Norway, there aren't any traditions of using gypsum mortars. Not much traditions of using gypsum mortars outside. There are, of course, a lot of buildings that have gypsum mortars, but when the cement mortars came, they were quite quick in replacing the materials.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
So if there are any other questions? No, I don't see. I think that we can thanks once again, Peter, to have been with us
Thank
this
you.
evening. It was really a pleasure, and we are going to. I mean, we recorded the lecture, and will be available on our YouTube channel in the coming week. So thank you very much to all of you as well, and thank you again. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.